like to vent for just a moment. One of the things that truly annoys me about personal finance influencers is that they infuse their advice with their own values. And they actually make you feel pretty bad if you're not doing it the way they would do it. For most personal finance influencers, the preeminent thing is to optimize your finances. And I can see why. If your finances are in tip-top shape, if you have the resources that you need, you can live the life that you want. You have the freedom to do what you want and to express yourself in the world in a way that many of us do not if we're constrained in our personal finances. But here's the problem. Very few of us will ultimately live truly free of financial concerns. And when you force your values onto other people, what you end up doing is forcing them to feel out of place with their own world. But let me give you a very concrete example of how values can go wrong. A few years ago, I talked to a family who went into debt in order to throw their daughter a quinceañera party. Now, a lot of personal finance influencers would tell you that that is a terrible reason to go into debt. You don't go into debt to throw a party. This family was prioritizing their daughter, and they were also prioritizing their community. It was a common occurrence that you'd gather all your family and friends together for this party. And they wanted to do that because they were part of that community. They would feel like they were separated from it if they didn't throw that party. So they went into debt. And it didn't make any sense for me to tell them that that was a bad reason to go into debt. In fact, it was a beautiful reason for them to go into debt. And I think a lot of us are not quite as far away from that position as we might think. We might all think that it's probably reasonable to go into a little bit of debt to pay for a wedding or an adoption. Now, all of these things you could save up your money for ahead of time, but sometimes that's not even realistic or reasonable. So the question is, should these life events be put on hold simply because we don't have the money, or that we can't pay for them the way we would want to, or the way a personal finance influencer tells us that we should? I don't know. It depends on your values. Let me give you another example. I talked to a woman once who said that she took out a high interest loan because her adult son, who couldn't afford it, needed some dental work. He was in deep pain. Now, some people would say that she should have cut him off. As an adult, he should have handled it himself. Other people would have said, well, maybe she could help pay for it, but don't take out a personal loan. But here's the thing. She valued two things. She couldn't tell her son no, who was in pain, but she also didn't want to dip into her savings. That's right, she had savings, but she took out a loan. For her, the savings was her protection. It was her security. She wanted to do both things, help her son and preserve her own future security. It would have been easy for me to look at her and say, you are far better off using your savings to help your son. You would have saved a lot of money. But that would have been imposing my values on her, that saving a little bit of money on interest expense was more important than the two values that she did choose and prioritize. One of the things that drives me the craziest about personal finance influencers is that they will interview people on air and they'll berate them. Not one of these people starts out the conversation asking, what matters to you? What are the things you value? What do you want to accomplish? How do you balance living today for protection in the future? None of these people do that because they're imposing their own values. And let's be honest, most of the people watching these videos are not actually thinking of themselves as the person being interviewed. They actually think of themselves as the personal finance influencer, judging the people who are on the other side of the fence, shaking their head about the terrible decisions they're making. In many of these situations, the people are a prop just for content. We make the incredible error of thinking that our values should be their values. I'm not saying that we don't make mistakes in our lives, even when we know our values. But what I am saying is that every one of us needs to be very clear about our values first, and then we need to understand personal finances. We can make mistakes because we don't understand how personal finances work, but we shouldn't make mistakes because we don't understand what our values are. We want to thank you for supporting our channel at the Yukon Project. It really helps us out. By clicking like and subscribe, it tells the YouTube algorithm that this information could be helpful for other people. So when you do that, it doesn't cost you anything and it helps us out a lot. We want to thank you for your support, and thanks for watching.